I died in that house. At least, that's what it felt like when my heart stopped beating for those 7 seconds. 7 seconds that changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what waits in between. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and 3 years ago, I was a skeptic. The kind of person who rolled their eyes at ghost stories, who had a rational explanation for everything. I was 26, working as a data analyst in Boston, living a perfectly ordinary life. I didn't believe in the supernatural. I didn't believe in fate. I definitely didn't believe that houses could be evil. Then I inherited 42 Millbrook Lane. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. I remember because I was drinking my third coffee of the day, staring at spreadsheets that all blurred together. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Miss Mitchell? The voice was elderly, formal. This is Howard Brennan from Brennan and Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Margaret Holloway. The name hit me like cold water. Margaret Holloway, my grandmother, except I'd never met her. My mother had cut ties with her family before I was born, and she'd always refused to talk about why. All I knew was that Margaret lived somewhere in rural New Hampshire, and that my mother's face would go pale and tight whenever her name came up. I'm sorry for your loss, Brennan continued. Your grandmother passed away 3 weeks ago. As her only living relative, you've inherited her property. I should have said no right then. I should have asked him to sell it, donate it, burn it to the ground. But I was curious. Maybe I wanted to understand why my mother had been so desperate to escape. Maybe I wanted answers to questions she'd never let me ask. What kind of property? I heard myself say. A house. 42 Millbrook Lane in Hollow Creek, New Hampshire. It's been in your family for 4 generations. 4 generations. And my mother had run from it. I told Brennan I'd drive up that weekend to see it. He gave me directions, told me the keys would be under the mat, said something about how the house had been well maintained. His voice had a strange quality when he said that last part. Looking back, I think it was fear. The drive to Hollow Creek took 4 hours. The October foliage was beautiful, all burnt oranges and deep reds, but as I got closer to the town, the trees seemed to press in tighter. The GPS lost signal twice. By the time I turned onto Millbrook Lane, the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. The house sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, surrounded by woods on 3 sides. It was a Victorian, 3 stories tall, painted a faded yellow with white trim. The porch wrapped around the front, and there was a tower on the left side with a pointed roof. It looked like something out of a Gothic novel. It looked like the kind of house where bad things happened. I pulled up and sat in my car for a moment, engine running, telling myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a house. Old, sure. Creepy, maybe, but just a house. Then I saw the curtain move in the 3rd-floor tower window. Just a flicker of white, there and gone. The logical part of my brain immediately offered explanations. A draft, a trick of the fading light. Except I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, could feel every instinct I had screaming at me to put the car in reverse and drive away. I turned off the engine. The key was under the mat, just like Brennan said. It was old, made of tarnished brass, and it was cold in my hand. So cold it almost burned. The lock resisted for a moment, then turned with a click that sounded too loud in the evening quiet. The door swung open. The smell hit me first. Not decay or mustiness like you'd expect from a house where an old woman had died. No, it smelled like roses. Thick, overwhelming, the scent of a funeral home. I stepped inside and the door closed behind me on its own. I told myself it was the wind, but there was no wind. The air was perfectly still. The interior was frozen in time. Victorian furniture, all dark wood and burgundy velvet. Paintings on the walls. Portraits of stern-faced people who seemed to follow me with their eyes. A grandfather clock in the hallway, its pendulum still swinging, even though my grandmother had been dead for 3 weeks. Who had been winding it? I walked through the 1st floor in a daze. The parlor, the dining room, the kitchen, with its ancient stove and farmhouse sink. Everything was clean, dust-free, like someone had just been there, just stepped out for a moment. In the kitchen, there was a calendar on the wall. October 2021. Today's date was circled in red ink. Beneath it, written in spidery handwriting, "She arrives." My hands went cold. I pulled out my phone to call Brennan to ask him who had been maintaining the house, who had been here. No signal. Of course, I was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods, in a house that smelled like a funeral and had my arrival date marked on the calendar. I should have left. I should have run. Instead, I went upstairs. The staircase was wide, the banister smooth under my hand. With each step, the floorboards creaked, and I had the strangest sensation that the house was watching me. Not just the portraits with their painted eyes, the house itself, the walls, the shadows gathering in the corners as twilight deepened into night. The second floor had 6 bedrooms. I opened doors, looked into rooms filled with more antique furniture, more portraits, more of that suffocating rose smell. At the end of the hallway was another staircase, narrower than the first, leading up to the tower. I don't know why I climbed it. Curiosity, maybe, or something else. Something that pulled at me, that whispered in a voice I felt rather than heard. Come and see. The tower room was circular, with windows on all sides and a panoramic view of the darkening woods. In the center of the room was a rocking chair, and it was moving. Back and forth, creaking with each motion. There was no one in it. Every hair on my body stood up. The rational part of my brain was frantically trying to explain it away. Old house settling, wind through the floorboards, anything but what my eyes were telling me. The chair stopped rocking. In the sudden silence, I heard it. A voice. A woman's voice, thin and papery like dried leaves. You came. I spun around. No one was there. The room was empty except for me and the chair and the gathering darkness pressing against the windows. Who's there? My voice came out as a whisper. You came back. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. After all this time, you came back to us. I'm calling the police, I said, pulling out my phone even though I knew there was no signal. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. There's no leaving, Sarah. Not now. Not after you've crossed the threshold. It knew my name. The temperature in the room dropped. I could see my breath forming clouds in the air. The windows began to frost over, ice creeping across the glass in crystalline patterns. And then I saw her. She appeared in the rocking chair like she'd always been there, an old woman in a white nightgown, her hair loose and silver around her shoulders. Her eyes were milky white, unseeing, but they were fixed on me with terrible intensity. Grandmother? The word came out before I could stop it. She smiled and her teeth were too sharp, too numerous. No, child. Your grandmother is gone. But we remain. We've always remained. I backed toward the stairs, never taking my eyes off her. She didn't move, just sat there in her chair, smiling that horrible smile. You can't leave, she said again. The house won't let you. I ran. I flew down the tower stairs, down the second-floor hallway, taking the main staircase 2 steps at a time. Behind me, I could hear things. Footsteps that matched my own. Whispers in the walls. Laughter that came from empty rooms. I reached the front door and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't turn. I pulled, twisted, threw my whole weight against it. Nothing. The door was sealed, as if it had never opened at all, as if the hinges were welded shut. No, 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 I heard myself chanting, still pulling at the door. The lights went out. In the complete darkness, I heard them. Voices. Dozens of them, maybe more. Some whispered, some screamed, some just laughed. They came from upstairs, from the parlor, from the basement I hadn't even known was there. I fumbled for my phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, and I wished immediately that I hadn't. Because in the parlor doorway stood a figure. A man this time, dressed in clothes from another century, his face pale as paper. Welcome home, he said. I backed away, swinging the flashlight around. They were everywhere. Standing in doorways, sitting on the stairs, pressed against the walls. Men, women, children, all of them watching me with eyes that reflected my light like animals in the dark. What do you want? I screamed. What do we want? The old woman from the tower was suddenly behind me. I spun, and she was close enough that I could smell her. Not roses now? Something rotten, something dead? We want what was promised. We want what we've always been owed. I don't understand. Your family made a bargain, a child's voice said from the stairs. I looked up to see a little girl, maybe 7 years old, in a torn pinafore dress. Half her face was missing, 4 generations ago. A deal for prosperity, for wealth, for success. And we've come to collect, finished the man in the doorway. I ran again, not toward the front door this time. I knew it wouldn't open. I ran toward the back of the house, toward the kitchen, toward any exit I could find. Behind me, I could hear them following. Not running, just walking, steady, patient, like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. The kitchen door was locked too. So was the window. I grabbed a chair and threw it at the glass, but it bounced off like the window was made of steel. "There's no leaving," the old woman said. She was in the kitchen now. All of them were surrounding me in a slowly tightening circle. "Not until the debt is paid." "What debt? I don't know what you're talking about." "Blood," she said simply. "The bargain was sealed in blood, and blood is what renews it. Every generation, one of the family must stay, must feed the house. Your grandmother stayed for 63 years. Now it's your turn." "I'm not staying here." I looked around desperately for a weapon, for anything. My hand closed on a knife from the butcher block. The old woman laughed. "Do you think you can hurt us, child? We're already dead." I lunged at her anyway, drove the knife toward her chest. It passed through her like she was made of smoke. The momentum carried me forward, and I stumbled, falling to my knees. That's when I saw it. There was a trapdoor in the kitchen floor, hidden under a rug. And it was open. Just a crack, but open. From below, I could see the faintest glow of light. I didn't think. I just moved. I threw the trapdoor open and dropped into the darkness below. I landed hard on a dirt floor, the impact knocking the wind out of me. Above, I could hear them gathering at the opening, their voices raised in what might have been alarm or anger. "Come back, Sarah. You can't escape. The house always wins." I scrambled to my feet and looked around. I was in a basement, but not like any basement I'd ever seen. It was huge, extending far beyond what should have been the footprint of the house above. The walls were stone, old and moss-covered, and there were tunnels leading off in multiple directions. And there was light. Hundreds of them, arranged in patterns on the floor, on ledges carved into the walls. They flickered in a breeze that came from nowhere, casting dancing shadows. In the center of the room was a circle drawn in salt. And inside the circle was a book. I could hear them coming down the stairs now. I ran to the circle, stepped over the salt line. The moment I crossed it, the air changed. It felt clearer, lighter, protected. The book was ancient, bound in leather that looked disturbingly like skin. I didn't want to touch it, but I didn't have a choice. I opened it to the first page. The writing was in English, but old-fashioned, hard to read. It was dated 1847. "I, Jonathan Holloway, do hereby record the bargain made this night. In exchange for wealth and prosperity for my family line, I pledge 1 life per generation to the spirits of this land. They shall have dominion over this house, and in return, my descendants shall prosper in all their endeavors. This pact is sealed in blood and cannot be broken save by blood." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the pages. But I did. I read entry after entry. Jonathan Holloway, who had built the house and made the original deal. His daughter, Elizabeth, who had stayed for 40 years before she finally died here. His grandson, Thomas. His great-granddaughter, Margaret. My grandmother. There were details in her entries that made my stomach turn. She'd tried to leave once when she was young. The house had made her sick. So sick she'd nearly died. The only thing that saved her was coming back. Accepting her role. She'd had a daughter, my mother, and she'd made the terrible choice to let her go, to not tell her about the bargain, hoping that maybe the cycle could be broken. That maybe if my mother stayed away, never claimed the house, never acknowledged the deal, she'd be free. But I had come. I had crossed the threshold. Before I tell you what I discovered next, if you're finding this story gripping, hit that like button. Trust me, you'll want to remember this channel for what's coming next. Because what I found in that basement, in the pages of that book, changed everything. The last entry in the book was from my grandmother, dated 3 weeks before her death. "I'm dying. I can feel it in my bones, in my blood. The house is patient, but it's hungry. Hungrier than it's been in years. I've kept it fed with my life, my energy, my very soul. But it's not enough anymore. It wants youth. It wants strength. It wants Sarah. I've tried to warn her. I've sent letters, tried to call, but Rebecca made sure she'd never hear me. My daughter hates me for what I became, for choosing this house over her. She doesn't understand that I had no choice. Once you cross the threshold, once you accept the inheritance, you belong to it. Sarah will come. I've seen it in dreams, in visions the house sends me. She'll come and she'll try to fight. They always do, but the house always wins, unless the entry ended there. No explanation of what unless meant. Just that one word, hanging like a promise or a threat. I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. They were coming. I flipped through the book frantically, looking for anything, any clue about how to break the bargain. The pages were full of rituals, of ceremonies, of horrible things my ancestors had done to keep the spirits satisfied. But nothing about ending it. Then, at the very back of the book, I found something. A page that had been torn out and then tucked back in, like someone had wanted to hide it but couldn't bear to destroy it completely. The writing was different, newer, my grandmother's handwriting. The bargain can be broken, but the price is terrible. The spirits demand a sacrifice, not just a life, but a willing one. Someone must choose to stay forever, not as a prisoner, but as part of the house itself. Their spirit must merge with the others, adding their strength to the entity that dwells here. And then the house must burn. Fire destroys the tether that binds the spirits to this place. But someone must be inside when it burns. Someone must hold the door closed from within, keeping the spirits trapped until the flames have consumed everything. I've thought about it. God help me, I've thought about doing it 1,000 times. But I'm a coward. I'm afraid of the pain, afraid of what comes after. If Sarah reads this, if she's the one standing in this basement with the dead pressing close, I hope she's braver than I was. I hope she can do what I couldn't. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. I looked up, they filled the basement, dozens of pale figures pressing against an invisible barrier at the edge of the salt circle. The old woman was at the front, and behind her, I could see them all. Generations of spirits trapped in this house, feeding on the life force of my family. You've read it, the old woman said. It wasn't a question. You know what must be done. Why? I asked. My voice was surprisingly steady. Why do you do this? You're dead. Why do you need us? We're not dead, she said. Not truly. We're trapped, caught between worlds. The bargain your ancestor made bound us here, and now we can't leave. We feed on the living because it's the only thing that makes us feel real. The only thing that reminds us we once existed. Then help me end it, I said. Help me break the bargain. We can't, a man's voice said. We're part of it now, part of the house. We can't want it to end any more than a wave can want the ocean to dry up. But you told me how to do it, I said, looking at the old woman. My grandmother. She left this page, she told me. Your grandmother was weak, the old woman hissed. She couldn't do what needed to be done. Maybe she was waiting for me. I stepped out of the salt circle. They could have rushed me then, could have torn me apart, or dragged me into whatever dark place they inhabited. But they didn't. They just watched as I walked past them, through them, their cold presence seeping into my bones. I climbed the stairs back to the kitchen. The trapdoor was still open. I pulled myself up and out, and the ghosts followed, flowing up through the opening like smoke. I walked through the house, really looking at it for the first time. It was beautiful in its way. The craftsmanship, the details, the care that had gone into building it. Jonathan Holloway had created something magnificent, and then he'd ruined it with his greed. 4 generations of suffering. 4 generations of people trapped, either as prisoners in the house or exiled from it. My mother had escaped, but at what cost? She'd lost her mother, her history, her heritage. She'd spent her whole life running from something I was just now beginning to understand. It ended with me. I went back to my car. The ghosts didn't try to stop me. They just watched, silent now, as I popped the trunk and pulled out the emergency kit I always kept there. Road flares, a blanket, a first aid kit, and a can of gasoline for the portable generator I brought on camping trips. I carried it back into the house. You're going to do it, the old woman said. It wasn't a question. Yes, you'll die. I know. And you'll become like us. Trapped here. Forever. I thought about that. Thought about existing in that horrible in-between state, not alive, not dead, just aware. For eternity. It should have terrified me. Maybe it did, but I was more terrified of the alternative. Of staying alive, a prisoner in this house, feeding these things for the next 60 years. Of the bargain continuing, of some descendant of mine standing in this same spot in another generation, facing the same impossible choice. Will it work? I asked. If I stay, if I burn the house with me inside it, will the rest of you be free? The old woman tilted her head, considering. I don't know, she said, and for the first time, she sounded human. Uncertain, maybe even afraid. Your grandmother thought so, but she could have been wrong. Then I guess we'll find out together. I started in the basement, pouring gasoline over the old furniture, the wooden shelves, the book. The book I saved for last. I held it in my hands, felt the weight of 4 generations of suffering, and then I tossed it into the puddle of gasoline at my feet. Then I went upstairs and did the same thing. Room by room, floor by floor. The ghosts watched me work. Some of them followed me around. Others stood in doorways or sat in chairs, waiting. When I reached the tower room, the old woman was there in her rocking chair. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could run. The door will open for you now. We can't hold you against your will, not really. The bargain only has power if you accept it. And if I run? I asked, pouring gasoline in a circle around her chair. What happens then? The house will wait. It's patient. It can wait decades, centuries. Eventually, someone else will come. Someone else will inherit it. The cycle will continue. Not if there's no house left to inherit. I finished with the gasoline and stood in the doorway, looking at her. She looked so sad, so tired. What's your name? I asked. Your real name, not whatever title you've taken on. She blinked, surprised. I can't remember. It's been so long. How long have you been here? I don't know. Time doesn't work the same way for us. It could be decades, could be centuries. Do you want to be free? She looked at me with those milky eyes, and for a moment I saw something in them. A spark of the person she'd been before this house had claimed her. More than anything, she whispered. I nodded. I pulled out the road flares from where I'd tucked them in my belt. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry my ancestor did this to you. I'm sorry my family kept you trapped here. We chose it, she said. At least at first. Jonathan Holloway promised us things. Power, immortality, a chance to stay in the world after death. We were greedy. We thought we were making a good deal. And instead you made a prison. Yes, I lit the first flare. It hissed to life, burning bright red in the darkness. Thank you, Sarah, the old woman said, for being brave enough to end it. I dropped the flare. The gasoline caught instantly, flames racing across the floor in a wave of heat and light. The old woman's form flickered, began to fade. I ran from the room, dropping flares as I went. Behind me, I could hear the fire roaring to life, hungry and hot. The house began to scream. I don't know how else to describe it. The walls themselves seemed to cry out, a sound like wood splintering and metal tearing. The ghosts were screaming too, but their voices sounded different now. Not angry or threatening, relieved, grateful, free. I made it down to the first floor as flames began to eat through the second-story ceiling. Embers rained down, setting fire to the curtains, the furniture, the portraits on the walls. The stern faces of my ancestors bubbled and blackened in the heat. I could have left then. The front door was standing open. I could see my car in the driveway, could see the cool October night beyond the flames. I chose not to. I closed the door instead, locked it, threw the deadbolt. Then I turned back to face the fire. The heat was incredible. It pressed against me like a physical weight, stealing the air from my lungs. Smoke filled the room, thick and black. I sank to my knees, coughing, my eyes streaming. And I saw them. They were leaving. The spirits, all of them, were flowing out of the house like smoke through the cracks. They passed through the walls, through the windows, through the very structure of the house itself. As they went, they looked back at me. Some nodded, some smiled, some just stared, their faces blank with wonder, as if they'd forgotten what freedom felt like. The little girl in the pinafore dress knelt beside me. She put her small, cold hand on my cheek. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was clear and sweet, no longer distorted by whatever dark magic had kept her here. "Thank you for letting us go." Then she was gone, dissolving into light and shadow. The old woman was the last to leave. She appeared in front of me, and for a moment I could see what she'd looked like before. Young, beautiful, full of life and hope. "I remember now," she said. My name was Catherine. Catherine Wells. I was 19 when I died. I thought the bargain would save me. Instead, it trapped me for 200 years. I'm sorry, Catherine. Don't be. You're giving us something precious, something we thought we'd lost forever. She leaned down and kissed my forehead. Her lips were warm, real peace. She faded away, and I was alone with the fire. The smoke was overwhelming now. I couldn't see, could barely breathe. The heat was so intense I could feel my skin blistering. The pain was terrible, worse than anything I'd imagined, but I didn't let go of the door. I held it closed, my hands locked on the handle, even as the flames climbed the walls around me, even as the ceiling began to collapse, even as my vision went dark and my lungs refused to draw breath. I held on, and then something happened. The pain stopped. I looked down at myself and saw nothing. My body was still there, still burning, still slumped against the door. But I wasn't in it anymore. I was standing beside it, watching as the flames consumed everything. I'd expected to become like the others, to feel that trapped, desperate hunger, to be bound to the house even as it burned. But I didn't feel trapped. I felt light, free. The house was burning, yes, but I could see beyond it now. I could see the night sky through the smoke, could see the stars, could see something else. A light in the distance, warm and welcoming. And I could hear voices, not the ghosts, different voices, calling my name. I turned away from the burning house and walked toward the light. Behind me, the house collapsed with a roar that shook the ground. Timbers crashed, walls fell, the tower toppled like a felled tree. The flames reached toward the sky, a pillar of fire and smoke visible for miles. But I didn't look back. I walked into the light, and the voices grew clearer. I recognized one of them. My grandmother, the real one, not the twisted thing the house had made her become. She was young, smiling, her arms open. "Sarah," she said. "Oh, Sarah! You did it. You broke the bargain." "I died," I said. The words should have been frightening, but they weren't. "I'm dead." "Your body died," she agreed. "But you chose it. You sacrificed yourself willingly, with love and courage. That broke the bargain's hold on your spirit. So I'm free? You're free. We all are. Everyone who was trapped in that house. Everyone who suffered under that terrible bargain. You freed us all." I looked around. They were there, all of them. The ghosts from the house, but they weren't ghosts anymore. They were people, whole and real and themselves. Catherine was there, laughing with relief. The little girl was holding her mother's hand. The man in the old-fashioned suit was embracing someone I assumed was his wife. "What happens now?" I asked. My grandmother smiled. "Now? Now we rest? We go where we should have gone a long time ago. And you come with us." But I'm only 26. I had a whole life ahead of me. "I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. But you were so brave. So much braver than I ever was. And because of you, this ends. The curse is broken. Your mother is free. If she ever has children, they'll be free too. The cycle is over." I thought about my mother. She'd know when she heard about the fire. She'd know what I'd done. Would she understand? Would she forgive me for choosing this? I hoped so. "Okay," I said. "I'm ready." My grandmother took my hand, and together we walked toward the light. Behind us, the house on Millbrook Lane burned to ash and cinders. By morning, there would be nothing left but a blackened foundation and the whispered stories of the neighbors who'd seen the flames. But the spirits that had been trapped there for generations were finally free. And so was I. That's my story. That's what happened to me 3 years ago. Or at least, that's what should have happened. Because here's the thing I haven't told you yet. The part that makes this story truly terrifying. I didn't die. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed in Concord, New Hampshire. The firefighters had found me unconscious in my car, which was parked half a mile down the road from the burning house. I had severe smoke inhalation and third-degree burns on my hands, but I was alive. I shouldn't have been alive. I'd been inside that house. I'd locked the door. I'd held it closed while the flames consumed everything. I remembered dying. I remembered leaving my body, walking toward the light, seeing my grandmother. But somehow I was in my car, and somehow I was alive. The police told me the fire had started around 11 p.m. Electrical problem, they said, though they couldn't find the source. The house had been destroyed completely. Nothing left but rubble and ash. When I was well enough to talk, they asked me questions. Had I been inside? Had I seen how the fire started? I told them I'd walked through the house, felt uneasy, and decided to leave. I'd gotten to my car and then saw the flames. I must have panicked, tried to go back in, and passed out from the smoke. They believed me, or at least they said they did. But I know the truth. I was inside that house when it burned. I died in that house. So how am I here? I've spent the last 3 years trying to figure it out. I went back to the site of the house. The town had cleared away most of the debris, but I dug through what was left. I found the remains of the book, burned to ashes. I found my grandmother's bones, identified by dental records and buried in the town cemetery. And I found something else. Carved into the foundation stone, hidden beneath where the basement had been, was an inscription. It was in Latin, but I had it translated, "One life to bind, one life to free, one life to walk between." I think my grandmother knew. I think she knew the bargain was more complex than it seemed, that it required 3 sacrifices: one to create it, Jonathan Holloway; one to maintain it, her; and one to break it, me. But breaking it didn't mean death. It meant something else, something the bargain's creator hadn't anticipated. I walk between now, between life and death, between the physical world and whatever lies beyond. I can see things others can't. Spirits who haven't moved on, places where the veil is thin, the echoes of bargains and curses and dark magic that linger in old places. And I can help them. The trapped ones, the lost ones, the ones who made deals they didn't understand. I can help them break free, the way I freed the spirits in my grandmother's house. It's not the life I planned, but it's the life I have. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really alive at all, or if I'm just convincing myself I am. If this is all some kind of afterlife delusion, a dream I'm having as my spirit waits for whatever comes next. But then I touch something real, a table, a wall, another person's hand, and I feel it. Solid, warm, present. I'm here. I'm alive. I'm walking between worlds. And if you're listening to this story, if you've made it this far, I need you to understand something. The supernatural is real. Bargains are real. And if you ever inherit something, a house, an object, a legacy, from a family member who cut ties with their past, be careful. Ask questions. Dig into the history. Because some inheritances come with a price, and some debts are paid in blood. If this story resonated with you, if it made you question what you thought you knew about life and death, subscribe to this channel. I've got more stories to tell. True stories about the things that walk in the shadows, the bargains people make when they're desperate, and the price we pay for our ancestors' mistakes. Because after what happened to me, I've made it my mission to find others like me. Others who've inherited curses or made deals they regret. And I help them break free. If you think you might be one of those people, if something in this story felt familiar, leave a comment. Tell me your story. Maybe I can help you too. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I died in the house on Millbrook Lane, and somehow I came back. This is just the beginning.